Harry Potter is easily one of the most famous fantasy series of all time, and certainly the most popular one to come out in the new millennium. It's been read and watched by millions, and beloved by just as many. However, just like with anything else that's insanely popular, it has its fair share of critics, as well as points of contention, even with those who are otherwise fans of the series. And today I'd like to go over one of these points and demonstrate how one little change could have easily made it so that it was never a problem to begin with. Now, before we get started, I would just like to take a moment to warn you that there will be some spoilers ahead for the Harry Potter series. So if for whatever reason you don't want anything ruined and have somehow managed not to have anything spoiled up until now, you should probably turn off the video. This will be your only warning. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's get into it. Okay, the issue I'd like to address here today is muggles, or non-magic folk, and how they're treated within the Harry Potter universe. Which basically boils down to the fact that the wizards go out of their way to hide themselves from them, cast thousands of charms to ensure they aren't discovered, and are basically ignored by large portions of the wizarding population. Even the ones who do like them are treated as weird or quirky, with many in real life even equating those who fight for non-magic folks' rights to PETA and animal rights organizations. Now, this has rubbed some people, fans and non-fans alike, the wrong way, with some even going as far as to say that the happy ending isn't a happy one because nothing has changed in this regard. The wizards are still hiding, and the muggles are none the wiser. Now, before I go any further, I would just like to throw in my 2 cents on the subject and note that this was never really something that bothered me too much, mainly for two reasons. The first mostly comes down to that as a writer myself, I can understand that wizards and muggle relations is not what the author wanted to focus the story on, and thus wanted to sweep the whole issue under the rug as quickly as possible, which I can understand. But the second and much more prominent reason is because I could see something like that happening in real life. I honestly don't think it's too far-fetched that if magical beings did exist in the real world, they might very well go out of their way to hide themselves and even fear the non-magic folk. I mean, I would like to think that they would want to help us ordinary people out, but I still say what's presented in the book is unfortunately very believable. But I'm getting off topic here. Okay, so the issue many have with this mainly comes down to a line spoken in the first novel, not long after Harry has met Hagrid and he is told he's a wizard. Now, note that this isn't in the movie, but in the book, Harry asks why wizards are hidden and don't just walk around freely with normal people, to which Hagrid dismissively says, "Everyone be wanting magical solutions to their problems. Nah, we're best left alone." And that's it. Harry just accepts that, and nothing else is ever said further on the subject. But the thing is, even if I myself can accept that for the sake of the story, I can see why that's a hard pill to swallow for some. When you later see they can grow back body parts like it's nothing, heal otherwise incurable ailments with one drop of a magical potion, and hundreds of other things that could save or drastically improve the lives of thousands of people. And what also doesn't help is how dismissively they think of muggles, even referring to doctors as those guys who cut people open with disgust. And I can see people's frustration with that, because if they didn't feel the need to hide themselves, then doctors wouldn't have to cut people open to heal the sick. And one thing that even bothered me was another scene that was only in the book, specifically Order of the Phoenix. Now, for those of you who don't know, after Arthur Weasley is badly injured by the snake, the healers have a hard time coming up with an antidote as well as a method to stop his bleeding wounds. So he allows them to try a muggle remedy on him, stitches. And Molly absolutely explodes at him, acting as though he had just gotten a huge tattoo of a topless woman etched across his entire chest or something. To her, it's no different than if he had tried a long proven more harm than good remedy from the Middle Ages or something, which to many shows exactly how highly she thinks of non-magic folk. To them, this proves she doesn't have a good opinion of them like the books claim she does. Instead, she just tolerates the barbarians' right to live. And they're supposed to be the good guys? Now, whether or not they're right about that, or if you agree with them, even I'll admit they've got a point when it comes to this. Because stitches have saved the lives of millions of people, and even if it's not as clean as healing something magically, it still works for hundreds of people every day. So for her to react like that makes her look ignorant at best and downright muggle-phobic at worst. And that's only one example of that, because there are others sprinkled throughout the books. But to get back to the topic at hand, as I said before, I understand that Harry Potter and friends fighting to have wizards and muggles coexist peacefully is not the premise the author wanted to have for her series, nor was it a topic she wanted to focus on all that much. And I don't blame her for that. An author is entitled to tell the story they want to tell, and I'll be the first person to tell you that. However, as I've mentioned elsewhere, world building is also a very important element to stories like Harry Potter, and though she does a good job at it otherwise, I believe there was a better way to address the Muggle Wizards dynamic without opening up a whole can of worms that she clearly never intended to in the first place. Because obviously the last thing she'd want to do is accidentally make the heroes look unsympathetic because of their indifference to the non-magic folk. But like I said, there's an easy way to fix that. Now, obviously she wanted to tell a story that could at least believably take place in our real world. So logic would then only dictate that the wizards would have to have a hidden society from us regular people as a result. However, it's the reason for this that could have been different, and slightly changing it could have easily covered up most of the issues the one in the book presents. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in the book, the wizards are hidden basically because they believe muggles would hound them and they want to be left alone. And the fact that everybody goes along with this accidentally makes them look like inconsiderate jerks at best to some people. And the fact that most wizards are shown to not even have a basic level knowledge of non-magic folk and almost seem to regard them and their methods as subhuman only makes it worse. But let's pretend for a moment we could change the reason for that. Let's just say for argument's sake that when Harry asks Hagrid why the wizard and muggle worlds are separate, instead of giving the reply he does, he instead tells him a story about how at some point in the Middle Ages, a group of muggles did something horrible to one of the most powerful wizards or group of wizards to have ever lived, be it killed their family, tortured them, etc. And the wizards were so overcome with rage that they cast out one of the most powerful curses ever produced, promising untold destruction if the wizarding worlds and muggle worlds were to ever interact on a large scale again. Basically, the consequences would be just short of the apocalypse. Now, I believe that an explanation like that would have been much better for the story because it would make everything that follows a lot more understandable. The reasons for the disconnect between the two worlds would be completely out of the character's control and would help rationalize why they go to the lengths they do to remain hidden. Because now, instead of just doing it so they won't be bothered, they're doing it to literally prevent the world from ending. And it could even explain why most wizards seem afraid of muggles or regard them the way they do, because at least they would have a legitimate reason to at least be somewhat afraid of them and want to stay away as much as possible. And from there, all you'd have to do is sprinkle a few parts throughout the books where Harry and maybe some of the others bemoan the fact that the wizards can't do more for muggles because of the curse. And other than that, the story can stay exactly as is. Now, maybe the explanation I just presented is a little cliche or over the top, but I still say it does wonders for the story, because it avoids all of the pitfalls the one given in the book falls into. By making the circumstances surrounding the whole thing be something nobody can stop or do anything about, instead of something that could easily be fixed that nobody ever considers doing, it puts the characters in a better light. Because that's something one must always remember when writing a story. No matter what, the sympathetic characters must always remain sympathetic, and the unsympathetic ones must always remain unsympathetic, and that the slightest changes can greatly impact the story in that regard. So you must always be on the lookout that nothing in your story does anything to break those rules, even when it comes to the simplest explanations and throwaway lines. Because many would argue that that's exactly what happened when it came to Harry Potter. And I must admit, had it been me, the explanation I just presented, or at least a variation of it, would have probably been the one I would have gone with to avoid just that. Okay, that pretty much wraps this video up. So what are your thoughts? Do you believe the whole Wizarding World Muggle dynamic accidentally makes the characters look unsympathetic and that a slight tweak could have changed all of that? Or do you think it's great as is and that I'm wrong about everything I just said? Please feel free to let me know in the comments. Because if you disagree with me, that's fine. I've got no problems with you if you do. And thank you all for watching. It is really greatly appreciated, and I hope to see you all next time.